I want to read you something about, there's something really unique about the relationship that formed between the Australian and Turkish soldiers during this campaign, and I think it is beautifully summed up there by Ataturk, and it's probably one of the reasons why when you come to Turkey, the Turks go, oh, you're Australian, and they are genuinely excited to have you as Australians. There's a real bond that's ironically formed out of war between our two states. And I just want to read you something that was written that sort of explains the nature of this relationship between the Turks and the Australians. The Australian troops were discovering a real sympathy for their enemy. They hated hearing the screams of the Turkish soldiers pleading for help, for relief from their suffering, for water in the hot sun. They hated the fact that nothing could be done for them. The Anzac admired the enormous courage the Turks had shown in keeping the attack going for long hours without any chance of success. Charlie Bean wrote in his diary that the Anzacs had now formed a new respect for the Turks, whom earlier in the campaign they had belittled and despised. Both sides began sending messages and even cigarettes across the French lines. In view of this new attitude, informal truces began to break out along the lines, as the Australians realised that the Turks must be given some help to recover their dead and even their wounded. Compassion wasn't the only motive. Almost as soon as the attack stopped, millions of lives descended on the corpses of the dead, posing a dire threat to the health of troops on both sides. But the thing could not be done in an informal basis. The Turks were told to apply for a formal truce. In due course, the senior Turkish officer appeared at Anzac Cove and was blindfolded so that he could not see the arrangement of the defence. For his part of the journey to the command post, he was carried on a stretcher by two burly Australian soldiers who had been called from their ships as soon to help. Charlie Bean watched this and was astonished. The Australians were naked as the day they were born, he reported, and took 3 photographs to prove it. The Turks and the Anzacs agreed a formal truce from 7:30 in the morning until 24 in the afternoon. Both were working to make the place livable for those still alive, to allow the battle to go on. And from then on, there remains communication. Now, communication is actually dangerous. Respect for your enemy is dangerous to war. Those of you who came to that last night before we went away, you watched that first bit of the Christmas truce. The same sort of thing happened between the Germans and the British in that first Christmas in 1914. And the danger would happen when you respect the people you are being told to kill. You would have seen in the news this last week, there's been a bit of a drama with Australian soldiers having written insults at Afghans on Facebook pages. Watch your Facebook, people. It remains public once you're out there. But they are in trouble with what they said. Yet these young men are actually asked to go over to the motherland and kill these people. It is much easier to kill somebody if you don't like them. It is hard to kill someone you like. So where a relationship is formed between the Australians and the Turks, it actually poses a danger to the capacity for the battle to go on. And yet, this relationship forms between the Turks and the Australians. And when we take you up the top of the ridge, in some places when we go to Queen's Coast, for example, in some places the trenches are only 10 metres apart. And they literally do lob cigarettes to each other instead of grenades. That's the relationship that forms in this tiny space that is Gallipoli. And it's from there that we get to kill us. We understand that we respect you and we will care for you always. And you can see the area that them ships are maintained. They're maintained by Australians actually, but they're maintained because they allow us to come and they welcome us here as part of this place. and that's the symbol of it there. It's quite magnificent. You don't often see something like this that comes out of war.
And just remember, we talked about it at Cape Palace yesterday, how many wives and mothers are going to actually have the opportunity to come here and see these things? When Ataturk says that, the relief that they must have felt must have been amazing when they read this.
There's one mum whose son died on the very first day at Gallipoli, and every single year for the next 15 years she would put a notice in the paper on the day of his death, and these are some of the things that she would say. On one of them she would say, "No farewell word was spoken. No one you loved was by your side. To hear your last name sighed, nor whisper just one last word before you closed your eyes." And there was this real yearning of people to know that their loved ones were safe. And as you can see, a lot of those messages, "My dear beloved son, you are now safe, you are at peace. Don't worry about your home. I know they are so far away, but they are in a place where they are loved and respected." That's extraordinary. That is extraordinary. Humanity on the part of the Turkish people as well.
Going back to Sophie's first passage when she said the guys were naked. These guys were out in the water, they were swimming, and they were asked to carry this Turkish officer on a chair, and they were as naked as the day. And they carried him from Brighton Beach all the way around to Asiatic Cove. And the British,
as only Aussies could.
And the British commander couldn't believe that they were treating this Turkish officer to the sight of 3 naked Aussie blokes. Just not officer class, who would normally deal with this sort of thing, but just regular sort of blokes. Just going, "No, that should be right, mate, no worries." Yeah. What's wrong? You know, naked as the day. And then when they were negotiating, and this is the thing that the British officer couldn't cope with, when they were negotiating a truce, a couple of Aussie subordinates, so officers but not high-class ranking officers, would open the plate and say, "Do you want a cup? You want a cuppa? Anyone want a cuppa? I'm putting the bit on. Who's up for a cuppa?" You know, while they're negotiating this thing and it should be all formal and hoity-toity and up your jacksie, they're going, "No, you want a cuppa, mate? Not a problem at all. I'll go and whip it on." That it was just has that element of informality to it, which was that thing that was quintessentially Australian. You've got rules? We're not worried about it. You just do our own thing. We're cool with it. That's that Aussie larrikinism. Yeah? Very, very cool.
But it's also the survival instinct.
It's the sort of things, boys, that made you want to just run up those hills yesterday. That's what it's about. It's that Aussie cool thing. Aussie cool thing. I don't know if that's such a word. Anyway. Alright. We're going to go walk along the road this way. Ollie, you've got your... Yep, got that. Beautiful. We're going to